Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk about Konami and how their big gaming comeback might actually be derailed by none other than their own past dealings, whether it be from employee treatment or cost-cutting measures. For many of us, Konami is a beloved gaming company that has ownership of some of the most beloved IPs in the industry. A lot of us older gamers know that very well. Metal Gear, Contra, Castlevania, Dance Dance Revolution, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gradius, Suikoden, Tokimi Memorial, Vanderhorst, and more all fall under their umbrella. Their numbers grew even more in August of 2012. At that point, they absorbed Hudson Soft. This added games such as Bloody Roar, Star Soldier, Bonk, Bomberman, and Adventure Island all to their list of properties. Part of what made these franchises so great were the developers behind them. Hideo Kojima created Metal Gear. Castlevania had a plethora of developers, but the originals were Akihiro Nagata, Nobuhiro Matsuoka, and Noriyasu Tokakushi. Suikoden, that was held by Yoshitaka Murayama. Over time, on the backs of these developers and the many properties they created, Konami enjoyed a status that put them on the same level playing field with the likes of Square Enix, Capcom, Namco Bandai, and Sega. From the early days of the Nintendo Entertainment System to around 2015, Konami could always be depended upon to bring a quality product to the gaming masses. Then things changed. Hideki Hayakawa, the CEO, made a point to push further into mobile games and pachinko and further away from digital games. A year or two later, a lot of negative underlying issues came about. In June of 2017, Japan's newspaper Nikkei had reported clashes between Konami and their lead developing unit, Kojima Productions. Allegedly, Konami wasn't allowing Kojima Productions to file paperwork for health insurance. This, along with a few other things, eventually pushed Kojima out, and he left Konami altogether to go independent. Another instance that was reported was Konami allegedly started filing complaints against any company that attempted to hire ex-Konami employees. Now, on a personal note, I find this one particularly damaging because that makes other companies veer away from hiring potentially good talent, and that really harms the industry as a whole. Then there's the inhumane issue of spitefully making sure individuals stay unemployed. We're way past the point of going too far, and the company is purposely stopping people from putting food on their tables. Ex-employees, they couldn't even speak out because Konami would immediately threaten to put legal action on them if they did. So basically, these people were really stuck. Then you have to take into account when Koji Igarashi left. Igarashi was one of the more recent developers for Castlevania. Now, his 3D Castlevania games, they didn't really do all commercially well. Castlevania Judgment in particular did very, very poor. That was when Castlevania was given to the European development team, Mercury Steam. Now, I can't confirm or deny this, but there's a rumor that Igarashi, he never really wanted to make Castlevania Judgment in the first place. The rumor was that Konami actually just pushed him into doing it. Now, when you look at his successes with Symphony of the Night and the Game Boy Advance Castlevania games, it's clear where his love and passion are. If you need any more proof of that, just look at Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Hideki Hayakawa's hard U-turn on everything that made Konami what it was really did a number on Konami's reputation. Yes, they were making a profit every which way from pachinko and gambling, but unfortunately, that came at the expense of their core, which was gaming. And any gamer will tell you, there was a time when they felt that Konami was only good for licensing out their IPs, and that stigma is still there even now. Eventually, Konami did decide they were going to start focusing on traditional games again. But here's where skepticism comes in. Now, over time, due to Konami's office politics and bad treatment of their employees, allegedly anyway, a lot of their top talent left. And the few that stayed through all of that, at some point they were eventually let go too. So that begs the question, why are they saying they want to focus on traditional games again if they no longer have the talent to make that happen? One word, outsourcing. Konami is now putting their historic franchises into the hands of mainly new, unproven, or average at best developers outside of their own company. From a fiscal standpoint, one would assume that this is a good idea in the short term. It costs less to send the IP out to outside developers that can work cheaply compared to quality in-house ones. You know, like the ones they had. Not to mention, contractors don't get company insurance. Now, however, in the long term, this can actually hurt Konami, because with cheaper, less experienced developers can potentially come lesser quality, and by extension, lessens the value of the overall product. When Konami first mentioned they were going to go back to making traditional games, it was met with more optimism than skepticism. Now, for myself personally, the dreamer in me veers towards the optimism, but in reality, I'm more on the skeptic side. Now, reason being, any of the developers that had experience with the story, the game development, the lore, or experience in general for all these stories franchises are long gone from the company. And now suddenly, just because they announced it, we're expected to believe that contractors with no track record, or very average track records at best, should be trusted with some of gaming's most historic franchises? Yeah, I'm not really buying that, no thank you. I have a feeling that Konami's long history of employee mistreatment, combined with them being cheap, is going to really start paying negative dividends on these games when they come out. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the games that they announced and or released since they've announced their renewed focus on gaming. The first game we'll be talking about will be Contra Roll Core. Contra Roll Core was developed by Toy Logic and released in 2019. Now at first, you would think that this game was in good hands, considering it was headed by the former Contra veteran, Nobuya Nakazato. For those that don't really know that name, he was responsible for both Contra the Alien Wars on the SNES and Contra Hardcore on the Sega Genesis. Not to mention, he was both producer and director for Contra Shadow Soldier on the PlayStation 1. So with that said, it would be easy to imagine that this game would have been in good hands with someone that's actually familiar with the franchise. Now unfortunately, when this game was released, the reception for it was very largely negative. In fact, you would almost think that Toy Logic is actually ashamed of release in the end. When you go to their website and you click under Works, you can very easily see all the mention of all their other projects, but Contra Roll Core is nowhere to be found. And I've searched all over, so to my knowledge it's not even listed there. That in itself is pretty much telling. And to be fair, that might actually serve as a lesson as well. Just because someone has past familiarity with a franchise doesn't make it a guarantee that a new iteration is going to do any good. We all have to keep in mind that Nakazato he's actually been away from the franchise since 2002. And with changes in innovation and consumer mindset, it's not always a guarantee that things that worked well in the past will translate well in the future. Now with that said, let's take a look at another game. Silent Hill is a horror franchise Konami started way back in the PlayStation 1 era. They made it to compete with Capcom's Resident Evil series. And this franchise, just like the rest, are currently being outsourced to numerous developers and publishers. Silent Hill Ascension, that one's being developed by Bad Robot Productions and Behavior Interactive. Silent Hill Townfall is being developed by No Code and published by Annapurna Interactive. And the Silent Hill 2 remake is being developed by Bloober Team. Most of these developers don't even have any games under their belt that are of any note. And Bloober Team in particular, they've never really made any games that really gravitated to the mass audience. In fact, most people see most of their things as pretty much average. Now out of all Konami's franchises, this is the one that has the most potential for the most negative backlash being thrown its way. And that's mainly because they'll be hitting the consumers with different visions from different developers. So basically, we'll have a franchise with numerous conflicting visions. And when you consider that most of these developers are considered mid at best, that doesn't really bode well for the quality of the series going forward. Now, let's move on to arguably Konami's most iconic IP. Metal Gear is arguably Konami's most iconic IP. It's the franchise Kojima started and had the most success with. But the big elephant in the room is that, like with all the other franchises, this one won't be immune to outsourced development either. Konami has already publicly told the world that Kojima won't be part of this project. But truthfully, this is definitely the one franchise they have that they really should have done everything in their power to get Kojima on board with. Reason being, we've seen this story before. Konami has tried to do Metal Gear 2 times without Kojima's involvement, and both times ended with poor results. The first time was with Snake's Revenge, published under Konami's now defunct brand Ultra way back in 1990 for the NES. Then, as of more recently, there was 2018's Metal Gear Survive. So the fact that we've actually seen this story play out twice before makes it pretty baffling that they would even dare try this a third time. Now with that said, there's at least one more franchise I want to really talk about, at least a little bit anyway. Castlevania is right on par with Metal Gear in terms of importance to both Konami and to gaming as a whole, which makes it a bit confusing as to why a new game hasn't been announced as of now. Now we already know if the game ever does come out, it's definitely going to be outsourced just like the rest. Now granted, Konami's always had a whole bunch of developers actually helm it, but at least all those developers were in-house, and by extension they understood the lore, the gameplay, and the inner workings of each of those individual franchises. There's no guarantee that these contract developers will bring the franchise back to its old prominence. Now if they were wise, they will let Igarashi return and work on the series. He's already openly said he'd be willing to work on the series again if they ever allow him to. But considering how cheap Konami's actively been, I seriously doubt they'd be willing to pay him the top dollar that he would deserve and demand, to be honest with you. Now personally, I don't see much success for Konami with the way they're going about their business. But assuming this attempt to return to the top of gaming doesn't bode well, what does that mean for Konami in general? One thing Konami can do is simply go back to business as usual. If licensing their properties out to third parties turns out badly, they can always take their ball and go back home to pachinko. And in all honesty, if this turns out bad, that's very likely to happen. They've already made it pretty clear that that's where most of their money comes from and attention goes to. Now of course, that will pretty much anger the gaming masses, but it's not like Konami has ever showed themselves to particularly care about bad press anyway. Another thing that can happen is maybe they actually care about the IPs they own and hire experienced in-house developers to actually take care of their franchises. This isn't really something I see them doing, but wishful thinking, right? Even if they wanted to work at fostering good relationships with developers again, Konami's alleged past history is very well documented, and more than likely that would deter them from actually getting, very attractive talent for these products. This is one of those situations where their reputation can actually precede them in a very, very negative way. So unless they're willing to give potential employees good binding concessions, this is extremely unlikely. Another thing they can do is license their IPs to more reputable developers. This actually dovetails with my prior reason about actually caring about their franchises. Now simply put, instead of rebuilding their in-house teams, they can simply license to bigger developers. They would get paid off the licensing fees, and they would have a much better chance of having quality products turn out for their franchises and actually help rebuild their company's name as a whole. Now the downside for them, at least probably how they would see it anyway, is that they wouldn't be able to just bully them around and throw their weight the way they would with contract developers that have little to no experience or name recognition. Because if there's one thing that we do know, with name recognition comes power. All in all, if this cheap way of working doesn't bear positive results for Konami, we might not see any more releases from some very classic franchises. They've already shown the world they have no problem focusing on gambling instead. So past experience shows us they have no problem abandoning the core gamer. And I think that most gamers would agree, if that were to happen a second time, we'd all lose. Thank you for hanging with us to the end of the video. Now, I would like to take a moment to remind everyone that weekly we give away $10 PSN cards or Amazon cards. Now these cards are a random subscriber every week. Now we also give away a physical game at the end of every month to a random subscriber. To be eligible, all you have to do is subscribe and comment to our YouTube, website, or Twitch channels. Now at the moment, if you live outside the United States and you happen to win a monthly prize, we would have to send you the money for it instead. Now right now, we're looking to remedy that because I'm actually looking for an international vendor. Now if anyone has any questions, please leave a comment at our website or our YouTube. Thank you.